Hello and welcome. I am Pranay Upadhyay and you are watching Namaste World, your daily window into the biggest stories shaping India and the world. We begin in South Asia. India's oil strategy is quietly shifting under US pressure as Russian crude fades and costly alternatives reshape trade, geopolitics and energy security. Without tweets or flattery, India forced a tariff climb down as strategic silence pushed President Donald Trump to retreat under mounting trade pressure. Seychelles President's India visit may look routine, but amid rising Indian-Ocean rivalry and 50 years of ties, its timing is strategic. And the biggest news of the day, India and the United States are deepening strategic ties on critical minerals, trade and supply chains amid shifting geopolitics and global dynamics. All that and more. Global flashpoints, power plays and stories that matter. Coming up in this edition of Namaste World. India and the United States are tightening cooperation on one of the world's most strategic assets, critical minerals. India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar met US Secretary of State Marco Rubio in Washington, D.C. ahead of the inaugural US-led critical minerals ministerial meet. Talks focused on formalizing cooperation in exploration, mining and processing, key to clean energy, advanced technology, defense manufacturing and supply chain security. Both sides also welcomed the new India-US trade deal under which Washington will reduce tariffs on Indian goods to 18%, easing months of trade frictions. India-US deal is going to sail through. Dr. Jaishankar said that discussions covered trade, energy, nuclear cooperation, defense technology and minerals with an agreement to fast-track key mechanism of the strategic partnership. Meanwhile, Secretary of State Marco Rubio also said that the two countries would work together to unlock new economic opportunities and strengthen energy security. Dr. Jaishankar also met US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, where supply chains and economic security were central themes of their discussion. The meeting underlined a larger shift as Washington looks to reduce dependence on China and India is emerging as a trusted partner. The message is clear. In the global race for critical minerals, trust and reliability matter more than resources alone. A quiet shift, a loud claim, and high-stakes geopolitics now collide as Washington, D.C. says India may phase out Russian oil and look towards alternatives. With costs rising, logistics stretched, and refineries finally tuned for Russian crude, the real question is this: can Venezuelan oil realistically replace Russia's oil exports to India in energy basket? Here's a report by Rudrashish Kanjilal.
A quiet shift, a loud claim, and a question with global consequences. Is India really turning off the tap on Russian oil? And if it is, can Venezuela realistically replace it? After months of pressure from Washington, India's oil strategy is entering uncharted territory. US President Donald Trump says India has agreed to phase out Russian oil imports. In return, lower tariffs, scrap penalties, and a reset in trade ties. Posting on Truth Social, Trump claimed Prime Minister Narendra Modi would stop buying Russian oil, a move he said would help end the war in Ukraine. New Delhi has not publicly confirmed this, but the signals are unmistakable. For context, Russian crude has been India's safety valve, cheap, reliable, and available in large volumes after Moscow was hit with Western sanctions in 2022. At its peak, Russian oil made up nearly 30 to 35% of India's total crude imports, roughly 1.7 million barrels per day. That is not a tap you shut overnight. Yet, pressure from Washington kept building. In August 2025, Trump imposed an additional 25% tariff on Indian goods, explicitly punishing India for buying Russian oil. That pulled total US tariffs on India to among the highest in the world. Now that extra levy is gone. Tariffs are down from 50% to 18%, and oil is at the center of the deal. Trump claims India could buy $500 billion worth of US energy, coal, and other goods. Delhi hasn't endorsed that figure. However, India has already started cutting back. After US sanctions on Russian giants Rosneft and Lukoil, shipments dropped by nearly a third to 1.3 million barrels per day. The strategy is diversification. India now sources oil from over 40 countries. The US and Canada are being prioritized. And the numbers show it. With Between April and November last year, US crude imports to India surged 92% from 7.1 million tons to 13 million tons in a year. But replacing Russia completely is a very different challenge. Here's the hard reality. Russian oil is cheap, US oil is not. Energy analysts estimate a full pivot away from Russia would raise India's annual oil bill by $9 to $11 billion. That is the cost of giving up discounted barrels. And then there's logistics. Shipping US oil to India takes more than 6 weeks. It locks up tankers on one of the world's longest oil routes, and it depends on a US Gulf Coast export system already running near capacity. Add to that competition. The European Union has agreed to spend $750 billion through 2028 on US oil, LNG and nuclear energy. India would be competing directly with Europe for the same barrels. There's also a refinery problem. Indian refineries are designed for heavy sour crude like Russia's. That oil produces more diesel and jet fuel, exactly what India needs. US crude is lighter and sweeter. Switching isn't impossible, but it requires operational changes that could take months, not weeks. Which brings us to Venezuela. Trump has openly floated Caracas as an alternative. On paper, it makes sense. Venezuela produces heavy sulfur-rich crude, perfectly suited to Indian refineries. India was once a major buyer until March last year, when Trump slapped a 25% tariff on countries trading oil with Venezuela. Now, the geopolitics have shifted. After the capture of Nicolas Maduro, the US has effectively taken control of Venezuela's oil sector. An interim government has struck a deal with Washington to sell 50 million barrels to US refiners. Energy laws are being rewritten to attract foreign investment. India could re-enter the picture, but expectations need to be realistic. Venezuela's output today is just 900,000 barrels per day. In the early 2000s, it produced 3 to 4 million. Ramping up will take years, political stability, and billions in investment. And sanctions haven't fully disappeared. Neither have logistics problems. Oil still has to cross half the globe. There's also the price question. Venezuelan crude was sold to Asia at steep discounts because of sanctions. If those discounts disappear, India's cost advantage disappears with them. So, can Venezuela replace Russia? Not quickly, not cheaply, and not at a scale, at least not yet. So, what does this mean for global oil markets? In the short term, very little. India cannot abruptly halt Russian imports. Existing contracts must be honored. Cargoes already booked have up to 90-day lead times. A sudden stop would mean penalties, shortages, and refinery disruptions. The wind down will be slow and calibrated. Russia, meanwhile, will redirect its oil elsewhere. China, already Moscow's biggest buyer, is expected to take more. So will Turkey and parts of Africa. Global supply remains balanced, even slightly oversupplied. So, this isn't a clean break. It's a gradual rerouting from Russia towards the US and cautiously towards Venezuela. India is reshaping its oil map, not tearing it up. The question is no longer if Russia's dominance fades. It's how much it will cost and how long India can afford the transition. Because in global energy, there are no sudden exits, only expensive adjustments. With Rudrashish Kanjilal, Bureau Report, India Today Global.
A box of rare earth minerals, a White House speech, and grand promises. Yet, Pakistan is believed to be missing out on the Washington's most important critical mineral summit, while India took center stage. As New Delhi deepens trust and trade with the United States, is Islamabad learning that in geopolitics, credibility matter more than commodities. Here is a report by Srijita Sen Majumdar.
Pakistan tried to buy its way into Washington's good books with a box of rare earth minerals. While India's Foreign Minister Jaishankar gets the red carpet treatment at the Global Minerals Conference, Pakistan didn't even get an invitation. For months, Islamabad has been desperately marketing itself as America's new strategic minerals partner. Army Chief Asim Munir and Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif even hand-delivered rare earth samples to Donald Trump at the White House. an unusual move that screamed desperation more than diplomacy. Pakistan's pitch was simple. We have the minerals you need to counter China. We are ready to deal. Just give us a chance. But Washington wasn't buying it. What is the problem then? Pakistan is confused, having resources but not being reliable. And in geopolitics, trust beats treasure every single time. While Pakistan was making grand gestures, India was building decades of strategic partnership. While Islamabad floated vague deals with mining companies, New Delhi was already negotiating comprehensive trade agreements. The Global Minerals Conference exclusion exposes the harsh reality. Pakistan's transactional diplomacy doesn't work anymore. You can't rebrand yourself from a security liability to an economic partner with a box of minerals. Meanwhile, India's External Affairs Minister Jaishankar attends the high-level summit, fresh off signing a major trade deal that slashed US tariffs. The contrast couldn't be starker. Washington's message is clear. Credibility, stability, and reliability matter more than symbolic offerings and political theatrics. Pakistan has minerals, so do dozens of other countries. But what Pakistan doesn't have is America's trust. And that's not something you can mine from the ground. With Srijita Sen Mojumdar, Bureau Report, India Today Global.
When the president of a small island nation visits, it rarely makes global waves. But Seychelles President Patrick Harmony's February trip to India carries quite strategic weight, as New Delhi marks 50 years of ties and deepens its Indian Ocean vision. So why does this visit matter and why it matters now? Here's a report by Jyoti Shukla.
When a small island nation sends its president on a state visit, it might not always grab headlines. But Seychelles President Patrick Harmony's upcoming visit to India this February is one of those trips that quietly carries big strategic weight. President Harmony will be in India from February 5th to February 10th, following an invitation from Prime Minister Narendra Modi. This will be his first official visit to India since taking office in October last year, making it an important early signal of how he plans to engage with key partners. What makes the timing even more interesting is that India and Seychelles are celebrating 50 years of diplomatic relations this year. 5 decades of cooperation, shared history, and people-to-people ties now frame this high-level engagement. For India, Seychelles is far more than a scenic island destination. New Delhi sees the country as a vital maritime partner in the Indian Ocean. The two nations share maritime boundaries, and Seychelles holds a special place in India's Vision Mahasagar, which focuses on maritime security, regional stability, and development through strong partnerships. During the visit, President Harmony will meet the President of India and hold talks with Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Discussions are expected to cover bilateral ties, regional security challenges, and wider global issues. The visit also builds on recent momentum after the Vice President of India travelled to Seychelles in October 2025. The trip is not limited to political meetings. President Harmony will also visit Chennai and Mumbai, where he will take part in business events aimed at boosting trade, investment, and economic cooperation between the two countries. The India-Seychelles relationship is rooted in history. As early as 1770, Indians arrived in Seychelles as plantation workers, becoming some of the first recorded inhabitants of the islands. During British rule, Seychelles was administered from the Bombay Presidency, creating strong trade links and migration routes. Diplomatic ties were formally established soon after Seychelles gained independence in 1976, with India playing an early and visible role. Today, the partnership rests on strong friendship, security cooperation, and close people-to-people links. In a region where the Indian Ocean is becoming increasingly contested, this visit is less about ceremony and more about strengthening trust, strategy, and shared interests. With Jyoti Shukla, Bureau Report, India Today Global.
No high-level meetings, no public bargaining. Yet, President Donald Trump decides to cut tariff on India from 50% to 18%. As pressure tactics fail and New Delhi stayed silent under Narendra Modi, did strategic restraint force America's loudest deal maker to blink first? Here is a report by Rudrashish Kanjilal.
Not a tweet, not a phone call, not even a flattening sentence. Yet Donald Trump blinked. After months of public jabs, tariff threats, and trade pressure, the United States has quietly brought down tariffs on India from a punishing 50% to just 18%. And Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi did it without stoking Trump's ego, without endorsing his Nobel Peace Prize ambitions, and without playing by Trump's script. So how did India pull this off? This is the story of strategic silence and why it worked. At one point, India-US relations were at the lowest ebb. Trump had labelled India a dead economy. He slapped a 50% tariff on Indian goods, and his aides kept up the pressure, publicly and relentlessly. But New Delhi didn't react. No counter threats, no television soundbites, no diplomatic drama. Prime Minister Narendra Modi chose patience over provocation, and in doing so, forced the world's loudest dealmaker to blink first. The result? India walked away with one of the lowest tariff rates, 18%, lower than China, lower than Pakistan. Even more crucially, the additional 25% levy on Indian purchases of Russian oil was dropped, all of it achieved without a single public concession. In 2024, US exports to India stood at just $41.5 billion. Scaling that to $500 billion would take years, if not decades. Delhi chose realism over rhetoric. But make no mistake, this wasn't accidental silence. According to US Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, India missed a trade deal window last year because PM Modi didn't personally call Trump. That wasn't a miss, that was a message. India would not negotiate on Trump's terms. So why did Trump reduce tariffs? Because India was no longer cornered. Despite Trump's threats, the world rushed towards India. The UK signed a trade deal. New Zealand followed. So did Oman. And then came the big one, the India-European Union Trade Agreement, the so-called mother of all deals, signed just last month. For Trump, that changed the optics completely. India now looked like the stable, reliable partner, while the US appeared volatile and hostile. Analysts say that deal alone likely forced Trump to blink. Those agreements gave India a cushion. They allowed Delhi to dig in its heels, especially on red lines. No unrestricted access to Indian agriculture, no opening of the dairy sector, and yet there was no public confrontation. Not PM Modi, not External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar. While the 50% tariffs hit, India refused to join a war of words. India had read Trump early. Trump thrives on spectacles, on provocation, on dominating the narrative. PM Modi denied him that stage. After a tense call where Modi flatly rejected Trump's claim of brokering the India-Pakistan ceasefire and brushed aside Nobel talk, Trump's ego took a hit. PM Modi then avoided 4 follow-up calls from Trump. Contrast that with Pakistan. Islamabad chose the opposite approach. Pakistan's Army Chief Field Marshal Asim Munir actively courted Trump, offering minerals, crypto deals and strategic leverage. It helped reset US-Pakistan ties. But India chose the long game. Quiet back-channel talks continued. The relationship never ruptured. At the same time, India sent a powerful signal. Without saying a word, PM Modi visited China for the first time in 7 years. He met Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin at the SCO. Soon after, he hosted Putin in a grand state visit in December. Visuals of Modi, Xi and Putin laughing together unsettled Washington. Trump lashed out online, writing, "Looks like we've lost India and Russia to deepest, darkest China." Again, minimum words from Delhi, maximum impact in Washington. India also retaliated quietly. It reduced US dollar exposure in trade and imposed a 30% tariff on American pulses. No chest thumping, no press conferences, because silence didn't mean inaction. It meant control. Now with tariffs down to 18%, Indian exports are back in the game. Textiles, gems and jewelry, leather goods, all became competitive again. Who benefits the most will be clear once the fine print emerges. But politically and diplomatically, this is a clear win for PM Modi and India. Trump shouted, India listened. Trump demanded spectacle. India offered silence. And in the end, the noise faded. Sometimes the loudest strategy is saying nothing at all. With Rudrashish Kanjalal, Bureau Report, India Today Global.
As we wrap up today's show, here's a quick look at the top stories making waves around the world. South Korea's parliament has agreed to fast-track a bill backing major US investments as tariff threats from President Donald Trump intensify trade pressure. Israeli tank fire and airstrike killed at least 18 people in Gaza as patient evacuation through the Rafah crossing were abruptly halted. And that brings us to the end of today's edition of Namaste World. From breakthrough in technology and business to political developments and natural disasters. Stay tuned as we bring you the latest updates, key developments and more from New Delhi to New York. See you again tomorrow, same time, right here on Namaste World.